A friend once told me that there were supposed to be 4 new evolutions for Eevee in Pokemon Gold and Silver. The 2 that are already in the game are Espeon, which is a Psychic, and Umbreon, which is a Dark Pokemon. The other 2 were dropped from the game. Those were Poison and Ghost types. I wasn't convinced this was true, but I decided to see for myself by trying a beta version of Pokemon Gold. The beta ROM was hard to find, mostly because the ROMs were either normal, non-beta, Japanese, or just didn't work. When I finally found a working ROM, I loaded it up to search for the new Eevee evolutions, and I wasn't quite sure what to do to get an Eevee to evolve into a Poison or Ghost type. So I just played the game normally, and I figured I would find out at some point. I eventually ended up beating the Elite Four and all of Kanto. The game was pretty much the same other than a few different locations, dialogue, etc. Oh, and Dunsparce never seemed to appear, but I won't complain about that too much. I didn't really like Dunsparce. But by the time I beat the game, I still hadn't figured out how to evolve my Eevee. I tried leveling it up all day, night, in caves, and after hours of trying, I finally decided to find the evolutions the easy way. By cheating. I tried to use Game Shark codes, but most of them did nothing, so I decided to ask for help online, and someone on Newgrounds said he could work on a code that should give me all the items. After a few days, he sent me back a code. The code I put into Game Shark loaded the beta ROM, and sure enough, the code had given me every item in the game. I looked through all the items and everything was the same, except for an item called the Toxic Stone. I knew this was the item I was looking for. I used it on my Eevee and nothing happened. The game simply told me it has no effect. I tried over and over, but nothing happened. Man, was I pissed. Was this all I got after I went through this damn game? There had to be something that I did wrong. So I thought maybe NPCs could help me out. I got the typical text from the NPCs. Man, that Team Rocket sure is persistent, or I love my Jigglypuff, and have you heard this one? Have you visited the radio tower in the Kanto region? But one NPC told me something that stood out. Did you know there's a stone that can evolve a Pokemon after it has fainted? And this is where I went wrong. So I had to use the Toxic Stone on my Eevee after it fainted. At least I hope so. My Eevee didn't take any time to be defeated, especially since it was around level 40 and I was in the level 60 area. After it was defeated, I went into my bag and used the stone on my fainted Eevee. And what's this? Eevee is evolving. Yes. Yes! Eevee has evolved into Zombreon. Now that was not what I was thinking. Zombreon looked like a normal Eevee, but was green colored, and parts of it were missing. Also, its cry was just a lower version of Eevee. Oh, and once it evolved, it learned an attack called Zombite, but this was all I worked for, a recolored Eevee? I mean, come on! I calmed down a bit and decided to test it out in the tall grass near Newbark Town. A wild Sentret appeared and I threw out Zombreon. I figured it would be pointless to use a move I've used a million times like Tackle or Flash, so I used Zombite. Instead, the attack animation was odd. It looked like Bite, but was 2 poison symbols flashing near the teeth. The attack was a one-hit KO, according to the text box. But what was strange now was that the game asked me if I would like to nickname Sentret, and it told me Sentret was sent to the PC. I didn't use a Pokeball, so why did the game say I caught the Sentret? I rushed over to the PC and checked for the Sentret, and it was not a normal Sentret anymore. It was now green. It was a poison type, and it had the move Zombite. Wait, I know what's going on. Every time I use the attack Zombite, which I figure means Zombie Bite, obviously, the enemy Pokemon will get infected, joining my team, and this was pretty obvious considering Zombreon was basically Zombie and Eon. I wondered what would happen if I infected a trainer's Pokemon. I used Fly to go to one of the routes in Kanto that I skipped most of, and ran into a trainer. The battle started, the opposing trainer flew out a Kadabra, and I immediately chose Zombite. It was a one-hit KO, but rather than throwing out the next Pokemon, the opposing trainer just came out and said, "What did you do to my Pokemon?" The battle was won, and I received the experience points and money. After the battle, the trainer was simply gone. Just gone. In fact, none of the other trainers were there either. Now, this began to creep me out a little bit. I walked around the area to look for another trainer, but found nothing. When I walked into the grass, a wild Kadabra appeared, although this wasn't a normal Kadabra. It was green and zombie-like, like the Sentret was. And I didn't even have to fight it. It just lost all of its health, and the game told me I caught it. This is getting a little creepy. I mean, I headed back to town when another wild Pokemon appeared, and it was a normal-looking Raticate. I don't want to fight it, so I pressed run. It didn't work. Zombreon is staring at the foe hungrily, the game told me. Then the Raticate attacked Zombreon with Bite, but after the attack animation played, the game said Zombreon countered the attack with Zombite, and the Zombie Bite animation played, causing the Raticate to lose all its HP and join my team. I wanted to get out of this area immediately, so I went into my team and used Fly. I wasn't expecting what I had seen, though. All of my Pokemon were now Creed and zombified, all of them now new Zombite. I made my Lugia use Fly to take me to Saffron City, but when I got there, all the NPCs were there, which helped me to relax a little. I mean, thank God. I decided to go into the Pokemon Center to check the PC, and when I did, the game let out an ear-splitting beep that made me jump a little. In front of the center's counter was a trainer with the Kadabra that I defeated earlier. A text box came up saying, "That's the man that hurt my Kadabra." Then the trainer ran to the corner of the Pokemon Center. A man sitting on one of the seats walked up to me and said, "Don't worry, I'll stop him." I was forced to battle him. He sent out an Arcanine and I sent out Zombreon. I tried to use Tackle and it worked, but after the animation finished, the game said, Zombreon used Tackle followed by Zombite. The battle ended, and when the game went back to the Pokemon Center, the greenish sprite of the Arcanine stood next to the man. "What happened to my Arcanine? What are you?" the man said before running out of the Pokemon Center. The Arcanine walks up to me and it told me that Arcanine was sent to the PC box, and then the Arcanine disappeared. Now, this was starting to get incredibly fucking creepy. I tried talking to the trainer in the corner, but all he would say was, "Please," or "No more." I tried talking to the nurse, but all she would say was, "Get out of my Pokemon Center." I checked the PC and sure enough I had zombie versions of all the Pokemon from earlier. When I backed out of the PC I noticed a new option on the PC called Release All. I tried pressing it but it told me not enough Zom Pokemon. Darn. I walked out of the center and the speakers of my computer were filled with large barrages of high and low pitched beeps, and all the NPCs outside the center ran towards the exits of the city. I tried to talk to one of them but they were moving too fast to do anything. When I walked out of town, there were no trainers around. I figured if I moved to a different town, everything would be normal. So I made my Lugia fly to Goldenrod City. When I landed there, there were no NPCs here either, and the music wasn't playing. I tried walking to a building, but the game told me the door is locked. I tried a few other buildings, but they were locked too. So I went to the Pokemon Center, and the door opens as usual, and I went inside. Nobody was there. But I noticed something new. There was what was appearing to be a radio on the counter. When I interacted with it, a text box came up. Beware of strange Pokemon. Trainers from the Kanto region have been reporting strange green Pokemon attacking and infecting other Pokemon and trainers. Remain indoors and avoid all contact with strange Pokemon and people, following by, "I'm so lonely." I figured there was nothing to do down here, so I walked to the second floor. On the second floor there was a bunch of NPCs standing still facing the stairs. Once I got up to the top of the stairs, a loud beep played and a text box said, "Get out of here. You aren't normal." A trainer standing in front of the crowd ran up to me and a battle started. The opposing trainer sent out a Ditto, and I set out Zombreon. I tried using Flash, but instead the game said Zombreon spat poison at Ditto, and Ditto was defeated. After the battle, the man backed up into the crowd. Suddenly, Zombreon walked out, and the game said Zombreon cannot wait any longer. And Zombreon ran into the crowd, touching every trainer and Pokemon, and when it touched Pokemon, they would turn green. When it touched trainers, the game would let out a loud beep, and then the trainer would disappear. Once all the trainers were gone and the Pokemon were infected, a text box said Jigglypuff, Abra, Ditto, and Clefairy were sent to the PC. Then the Pokemon disappeared. I checked my trainer card because I remember the trainer from earlier saying that I wasn't normal. Sure enough, my trainer was zombified too. I felt kinda sick. Would Game Freak really do something like this? I shook off the feeling and tried to fly to a different town, but the game told me that Lugia is too weak to fly. Great. I went back to the center to get a new flying Pokemon from the PC, but when I looked inside, all the Pokemon of the PC were infected. I tried taking out my Pidgeotto, but pressing the withdrawal button would just play a buzz sound that usually played when you weren't allowed to do something. I couldn't move Pokemon either, so there was only one thing left to do. I saved the game first, then I pressed the Release All button, and the game asked, "Would you like to release all Zom Pokemon?" Yes. All Zom Pokemon have been released. I checked the box, and now all my Pokemon on the PC were gone. I was confused. What was the purpose of an option like this? I walked outside and got quite the surprise. Parts of buildings were on fire, windows were boarded up, and NPCs were running from green Pokemon. I couldn't interact with the Pokemon or trainers, so I decided to walk out of town. The area outside of town was similar in a way. A few trees were on fire, and there were gray particles moving in front of the screen, which made it look like the screen was all smoky. Walking into tall grass didn't cause wild Pokemon to appear, but I could talk to a small amount of NPCs that were standing around. They would say things like, "I had to hit my poor Pikachu with the stick, he just wouldn't stop trying to bite me. Who started this? And I want this all to end, I want to go home to my family." I eventually walked to Violet City, then to Cherry Grove City, and finally to New Bark Town. This was the only place that was normal, sort of. The trainers that walked around outside the buildings just weren't there anymore. I went into the lab to see if it was empty too, and it wasn't. Inside was a single professor. Once I took a step forward, an exclamation point appeared above his head, and he walked up to me. I finally finished it, a gene that protects my Pokemon from that poison stuff that has caused all the Pokemon to turn strange. This is where it all began, and this is where it will all end, he says. Causing a battle to start, the game said that Professor Elm would like to battle. He sent out a level 86 for Alligator, and I threw out Zombreon. I knew Zombreon was too weak to handle this, so I switched to Lugia. When I tried to use any attack other than Zombite, Lugia would end up using it anyways, and when Lugia did, I'd get a message that said it has no effect on Feraligatr, and after this, the opposing Feraligatr used an attack called Cure, and that was super effective, and defeated Lugia right away. My next Pokemon was my Typhlosion, and the battle was almost the same as it went for Lugia. I tried using Flamethrower, but instead Typhlosion used Zombite, and was instantly defeated by Cure. The battle went on like this until I got to Zombreon. I pressed Zombite at this point because I knew it was coming. It didn't work, and Feraligatr used Cure. Zombreon was brought down to 1 HP, and the game said Zombreon refuses to give up. Zombreon uses Struggle. Feraligatr was instantly defeated, and Zombreon was defeated in the recoil. Professor Elm came up and said, "No, no, no!" and the battle ended. After the battle, Elm took a step back and said, "I lost. It's over. It's all over." I want to end this pointless game right now, and ran out of the lab. After a few seconds, a text box said, "You hear a loud bang in the distance," and I think I know what that meant. I went outside and the text box came up. Why did this have to happen? I didn't understand who said this. There was nobody around. I thought maybe someone was in my character's house, so I headed there. Inside, it was my mom. She was sitting on a chair in the house as usual, so I tried interacting with her. She definitely wasn't doing anything usual. It's Mom. She's not moving, and that text actually made me feel pretty sad. But I didn't expect the screen to cut to black after the text box closed. The screen faded from black to the opening screen where you get to enter your character's name. But my character just stood there and the text box said, "All of this is my fault. All those poor people, my mom, Eevee." But was it really my fault? The character stared at the screen for a split second and cut to black, then the game went straight to the credits. Nothing was different, all the Pokemon were there as usual, and once the credits were over, the emulator froze. Now whenever I try to load the beta ROM, the emulator just freezes. I realize this is only one of the 2 evolutions for Eevee, as the ghost one is probably in Pokemon Silver. I can't imagine what would happen with this evolution of Eevee, and honestly, I don't want to know. Well, it's been quite a while since we've read a Pokemon creepypasta. They come here and there, but usually, whereas they're very popular, they kind of tend to be skipped through, but, coming across one titled Zombreon, how can you really look past? So going into this, I was pleasantly surprised coming across these screenshots as well, and a pretty competent story. As far as a cliche standpoint goes, it works. The game was acquired fine, standard ROM on the internet. Acquiring a beta ROM, I wish there was a little bit more elaboration on that, but the idea of getting a Game Shark code from a friend who knows how Game Shark manipulation works is all fine and dandy. In fact, everything that happened in this ROM was technically feasible too. Looking at some of the screenshots, it's obviously you can replace the sprites, you can even replace certain animations if you still want to, and the idea of adding release all and just having this whole story play out, aside from, the buildings being on fire and whatnot, I don't know if the Pokemon engine was capable of handling that, but regardless, the stuff seemed like it was possible. It seemed like something that could happen in a legit ROM hack, or hey, even a normal copy of Pokemon if one ventured a little too deep. And honestly, the story, while it was creepy in its own way, it just didn't really stick to me as a creepypasta. I guess you could say, you know, I guess I sort of have this ingrained notion of what a Pokemon creepypasta kind of should be after reading, you know, a fair bit of the good Pokemon creepypasta out there. Not saying this one is a horrible one or anything, it's just a little different, which in its own way is actually really sweet and very welcome. But as far as this creepypasta heads out, it plays like an actual Pokemon game I would really, really like to play, in all honesty. I'd really actually want to see this as a ROM hack, or hell, in some case, I know it'll never happen, but even in an original release. To be fair, the idea of Eevee evolutions is interesting too. As generations keep rolling, it seems this Pokemon has more and more, you know, evolutions ever since its first inception in the first generation. Having it showcased with 2 exclusive, you know, upgrades, the Poison Zombie type and the Ghost type, which we'll never get to see, and hey, maybe that might be great sequel bait, but until this author decides to write another one, we won't really know what the heck the Ghost Eevee will do, but if anybody takes a crack at it, give it a shot. But as far as the zombie one goes, it totally leads to a different plot point in the game. You taking over, reaching an end game where everything goes to hell. A zombie outbreak in the Pokemon universe. It takes a fair bit of you know, planning to figure out how a zombie apocalypse in the Pokemon universe could work, and so far this creepypasta kind of plays out like a legit version of that. And just reading through the events that go on, sure, there are parts which seem utterly cliche, and I swear there were a couple of lines from this that just instantly just made me near facepalm, but if you look at it just completely on its own terms, it works fairly well, and the creepiness surrounding it is just the fact that, heck, something like this could work in a universe we all know and love. Ultimately, though, this story stands on its own merit as a good creepypasta. I quite enjoyed how it played out. It didn't last too long, it wasn't too short, and ultimately it was the perfect length. The entire core of it, the zombie outbreak, was fleshed out just fine, and it was technically believable. It's something that I would actually legit picture out playing through in an actual Pokemon ROM hack, or hey, maybe an original game, even though that'll never happen. But ultimately, this has been another Pokemon creepypasta, so I don't have too much more to say, but I will end up leaving with the comment on asking you what you think about this creepypasta, what you would change to make it better, and what would you rate it, as always. This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, part of Creepypastas. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. Tell me what you would think about a Pokemon zombie apocalypse in the comment section below. This is me, Mudahar, and I am out.